Hello and welcome to Cosmic Emporium, and we are joined by Rolf, Kathy, and Aragorn, and I'll just have them say hello, and I guess I'll call that way here that we don't get multiple screens. And so hello, Rolf.
Hello from Southern California. I have my shades on so everybody knows where I come from.
And hello, Kathy.
Hi there, in London.
And hello, Aragorn.
Peace and long life.
There you go.
All right. So we're going. I guess we have a few topics to discuss, and Robert David Steele is somebody who has certainly been out there creating a stir. I guess we're going to talk about whether what he's creating a stir about is what he's talking about, or is it really just about Robert David Steele? So I'm going to turn it over to the panel and get it. Whoever wants to start the conversation, please do.
Well, I've addressed a few weeks ago. I had on another TOTCAST. I addressed the fact that Robert David Steele appears to be wanting to usurp, or at the very least co-opt, the alternative community. He's working his way into the alternative community, maybe with his background in the CIA as some sort of street credibility. And he recently stirred up a lot of dust when he went on Alex Jones' show, where he spoke about a slave colony on Mars, which was, of course, it was caught even by the mainstream media, even over here, with the necessary ridicule, of course. But so there's obviously this guy appears to come out of nowhere, CIA background, has a political campaign going on Rig. Everyone's heard about it. Joins up at Project Avalon, one of the biggest alternative community forums, where he is warmly received.
But that's changing a bit now, Aragorn. I think it looks like Darth Hatman is beginning to throw him under the bus.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw something. I think it was on one of the Avalon files, and sorry, I should have done a little bit more homework, but if memory serves, they are now not very, or Bill, I should say, is not very happy with.
It's so unlike Bill to throw somebody under the bus.
Well, you're right. So, yeah, that's the MO, right? I mean, he promotes somebody, and then they get a little bit too much fanfare, and then
and he owns an entire bus depot. So,
right, yes.
Well, I mean, Robert David Steele kind of signed up. Everybody was excited, but he hasn't really spent any time on the forum. And after we do get a few more voices, we might get some insight to why he's kind of comes in, creates a big kerfuffle, and then seems to have not a whole lot to say.
Yeah, I think, just from what I see that's going on, he has a lot of things. I'm on his feed that he has, his email feed, and he has usually a lot of things going on every day. Of course, he's got a web group that's feeding this stuff, and he's got guys that he tracks. But they are doing, political fundraisers and stuff. So I get the opinion he's running around the country. I don't think he has an awful lot of time to hang out in a small forum. I mean, in the larger scheme of things, with the voter guys, he wants to get in, the Avalon crowd. I think he just sort of jumped in there and thought, okay, maybe I can get some guys. And but I I don't think they figure a lot into what he's doing. It's
I think that from his point, well, from his point of view, he's probably just doing that to get a greater following. Because
yes.
I don't think that he well, let's say I'm pretty convinced that that he's not doing that so as to become a whistleblower or because even the stuff that he said on Alex Jones show was not his material. It's not like, hey guys, guess what? I was in the CIA. We've got a slave colony up on Mars. He simply took something that has been out there for quite a while already. Again, from Corey Good's story, but also from what David Wilcox said earlier, and even what was his name, Randy Kramer, Captain K.
Yeah.
He also spoke about a slave colony on Mars, and so he's simply taking that and throwing it out there just to catch the attention, to draw the attention, and
but if he is a stalking horse of it, this is kind of a psyop technique. You have a guy who has a large following, which Alex Jones does, and you get out on his show, and I don't know if they agreed to say that, he was going to say this before or not, but gets out there and throws something that is really crazy as far as the normals, the muggles, if you will. A slave colony on Mars. First off, we're on Mars. And then, oh, by the way, we got a slave colony there too. It's run by the dark state, deep state. And everybody that I know of here, the normal crowd is, this is Alex Jones getting really on the deep end. Look at this clown that he's got, and most of the people have not heard about this guy talking about a slave colony. Give me a break. I think it was a very destructive move, and as you recall, I wrote something on the forum that pretty much said, "Why are they doing this?" Now, in a little bit of hindsight, I think it makes sense. It's a move to take Alex Jones down a peg or two.
I'm inclined to agree, because this is not the kind of stuff that Alex Jones would normally put out there. He's as far out as he may be in the eyes of some. He's a. I guess he's the kind of guy who would give more credence to something like the Unrig campaign because of his rather traditional but conservative political views, and suddenly having somebody on his show announcing a slave colony on Mars, that's gotta really put a dent in Alex's reputation.
Yeah. It always, again, my background. I look at all these things as why, it comes from being a chess player, a gamer. I'm always getting in the other guy's shoes, looking at why would somebody do something like that, and when from a psyop standpoint as well. It makes sense now. It makes big sense. They're really screwing things up,
I'd like to put my opinion in and then ask Kathy how she feels about that.
There you go.
Here's what I think. I think Alex Jones is very popular, and I think there's a little bit of a psyop, not just against him, but Donald Trump. And Alex Jones is a big supporter of Donald Trump. Also,
That's
on
a
the
good point.
mainstream news, very few people know the name Robert David Steele.
Yes.
So he says something outrageous like this on Alex's show. The MSM covers it because they want to hurt Alex, but Robert David Steele's name gets put into and now he gets now his name. He might be, so people are going to go, who's this guy on Alex's show? And then they go investigate somebody they never heard, and they find out, everything, and they're not going to find anything about Mars when they go investigate him. It's only on Alex's show. So Alex looks like an idiot. People find out about Robert David Steele, and a mission accomplished. Alex gets hurt. Robert David Steele gets known. people, because people are going to say, you know, again, they're going to start finding out who is him, and then they're going to look at all these videos, and he hasn't mentioned Mars at all. He's going to be talking about unrigged and everything that he's pushing. So what do you
Well,
think
and,
about that?
and also he comes up and he's very upfront about being a CIA guy, and all the stuff that he did in intelligence. That's going to show up and hit people in the face.
Yeah. And what do you think, Kathy?
Well, in first instance, I would say what that guy emanates is all that background, support that he's getting, behind the scenes is what I feel from him anyway. And as far as that scenario with Alex Jones, is what my mind didn't go there. It went to, well, what if there is any truth in, the slavery on Mars? And so far we know it takes a good 20 years to get there, if they ever managed it. And you've got loads of kids going missing all the time. So by the time they got to Mars, they were young now, 4, 5, that kind of age, there'd be adults on Mars to be slaves. That's the way I saw it. So I didn't go into, what I felt from the guy himself was just, he was reeking this back stuff,
PSYOP.
Yeah, reeking.
Well, how they got there. It's with movie and Alternative 3, and you have you have so many scientists that just disappeared.
Yes.
Now, I noticed this. I'm a scientist. I'm a mathematician, and I'm not a very good mathematician. I'm an average mathematician. And when I was young in the 60s, I remember all these very, very smart people that were around. A lot. And they disappeared, in the 70s and in the 80s, it was like I was one of the few guys. Now, maybe it's a good thing I'm I'm one of the dumb ones. But, but it was palpable to me. It's like, where did all the hard scientists go that I had grown up with? Mm-hmm. And when I saw this Alternative 3 thing, it resonated with me. It's like, okay, I see how this could happen.
Yeah.
Now, when you get into, the jump rooms, the Mars jump rooms that Ande Basiago talks about, and then, of course, I'm a timeline guy. I do believe that people can travel up and down in the timelines. It's a technology that is known, on the dark side, if you will, deep state side. So it's, I think it's all very, very plausible. And since I'm also a firm believer in the secret space programs that are hidden from us, and the technology, which I think is very, very advanced back there. And I saw some of that in my black projects, just the edges, just a small part of that. Yeah. I think it's all entirely possible. But to fling it out there, full blown, on Alex Jones in the way that it was done, in your face to the mainstream public, the normals can't buy it. And I think, as Rad said, probably the ultimate splashback was, Alex Jones has had Trump on his show several times now. It splashes all the way back to Trump.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow.
But again, but it also it hurts anybody except Robert David Steele.
Yeah, he gets his name in lights.
He only says it one time, and then when people go looking for more on it, they find out nothing from it. All his videos that he makes, everything you're going to find out about him has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do about unrigged and all the things that he's actually pushing.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is a very, very interesting point, because you're right. There is and that was the thing that shocked me. Is like, well, he never said anything about that, And no, that's a great point. even though you're kind of half asleep, Brad, you are picking up on cool things there.
I have my moments.
Got your moments. Got your notes, maybe.
Yeah, it's like that that clickbait. That's a term on YouTube. Sometimes they put up a video on YouTube, and the preview image is something that doesn't even show up in the or is never even talked about in the video, but they use that as clickbait. So,
Yes, yeah,
and that's the impression I get with what Steele said about that secret, that slave colony on Mars. He's just that's the thing that's going to get him into the attention of the alternative community, which he, according to me, which he is trying to do in order to rally the alternative community into supporting his political campaign, his unrig campaign. He just wants a bigger vote, and what better way to lure the sheeple, sorry for the word,
muggles.
Muggles into supporting him, than throwing something out there that makes them drool, like that slave colony on Mars.
All right.
Regardless of whether there is or is not a secret space program, personally, I'm inclined to believe that there is such a thing. I mean, yeah, there's been too much weird stuff going on. Too many people are seeing UFOs. Not all of those will be extraterrestrial. So there's definitely, Richard Dolan does a lot of great work in that area, in exposing things, discussing things. So yeah, there is truth to the secret space program. But as far as I'm concerned, Robert David Steele doesn't know first thing about a secret space program. He's just using it as clickbait to get the alternative community to support him, and in the process, he's also nuking Alex Jones, maybe Trump, but I don't know. I'm not an American, so I'm not well versed on internal American politics. All I know is that there's a lot of infighting right now, and that people are still fighting over Trump. He's a good guy, he's a bad guy, whatever. I don't want to cast any judgment on that, but so yeah, it's possible. I don't know. I guess you guys, you Rolf and Rad, will know more about that. You guys being acronymians, so
there you go.
But yeah, obviously, he's Steele is trying to use the community, the alternative community, for his own purposes. That's one. And number two, he's doing damage to the community, and not just to Alex Jones, but it's just another distraction.
Yeah, but I think this is again looking at the entire panoply of what's going on. You got the blue chicken fight, if you want to call it that, between Corey Good and Darth Hatman, I like to call him. That's been a big thing. It's like somebody decided, and maybe it was when Greer came after a Good, at the end of last year. But it's like the floodgates, or somebody said, okay, now we're going to start dividing up the alternative community, and it's like okay, they're now starting to get together and make a presence, with their consciousness, perhaps, and somebody decided, deep inside the dark state, that we're going to have to start playing the cards that we've kept hidden, and Ryan now shows up, who's kind of been sort of in the background for the longest time. And now you have, Steele doing this PSYOP thing. And it's like all of a sudden, all these things are going to really, I think, cut us in pieces. But let me ask a question here too. If you are going to become as a member of this, this community, where do you go if you don't go to the unrigged guys, or do you even get involved politically? I mean, I'm very non-political now, where I was, 10 years ago, I was pretty involved. Now I'm absolutely, I don't want a part of anybody. I can't see anybody out there. And I was looking at this unrigged thing thinking, is that something? But even, a month ago or a couple of months ago when this started showing up on my radar, it was like, there's something that doesn't quite smell exactly right about it.
If I were going to say something with regard to Donald Trump ran on a platform, okay? And that's what he kind of got elected on. And then in his inaugural speech, he said he was going to give the power back to the people. So, and I would like to think that he meant that, but in saying that, because some people go, do you think he's a savior? I go, no, he didn't run on being a savior. He went on giving power back to the people. So how do people take their power back and speak to a president? That means whether or not you voted, you still have congressmen and senators. So you start calling them or emailing them and tell them what you would like to see happen in Congress. That's how power gets back to the people, by people becoming engaged in government. They don't have to be engaged in politics. They have to be engaged in policy setting. They have to be engaged in what they would like to see their government do, whether it's this is to me, there was a real uniting message in there if people wanted to hear it. And they would also have to realize that we have a republic. And a republic means you have representatives, and they're there to represent your voice, but they have to hear your voice. And then when you make your voice heard, the president can then work with Congress to make sure that your voice is heard. But if all we're doing is shouting at each other and screaming in the streets and not directing whatever it is that we would like to see happen at our Congress people, the people can have the power, because our government is set up that we have representatives, and you have to put the pressure on them to enact what you want. And that isn't so much political involvement. To me, that's involvement in how the government runs. And you don't have to pick a side to know what you like and tell your congressman what you want to see happen.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I'm having trouble with it. I want to become involved in my local political, city government, perhaps. Going to Arizona, it's like, I don't know. I have a lot of problems with the state. But I'm going to do something. But as far as me voting in national elections or, for senators or whatever, I've given up on.
Oh, lucky you. You get John McCain.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go. This guy is Mr. War, So.
In UK, we have a system whereby we can email or send a letter to the House of Commons, to any MP that you wish to, or even, one of the major ones. And thereby you represent 1,000 other people. So your one communication represents 1,000. Is that not the case in America?
Yeah, you can write your you can write your representative, and there's a lot of people that do that. Matter of fact, as you get older, you find a demographic where it's older folks really got time to write letters, I suppose. Yeah. But my wife does a lot. I don't. Maybe I'm lazy. I just don't think it works. That's really what it turns out to be. I think it's a waste of my time.
Well, it's a little bit suspicious, because when we send a letter, we get a response acknowledging receipt of that. Doesn't necessarily mean that it goes any further. You have to push it.
I think it might depend on the volume. If a small portion of the population sends a letter, they look at the proportion. They go, okay, a very small proportion are doing this. Yeah. And we don't really need to act, because there's only a small a group of people doing this. If they get hammered, they go, "Ooh, boy, we better do something about this." Yeah. And it's just,
the thing is with modern electronics, and the fact that you can actually have a device that will identify that it's really you, with the fingerprint stuff, we could have instead of representative government, we could have something very close to the Athenian democracy, where one vote, one person, one vote, direct democracy. We could approach that now because we have the technology to do that, and I don't see any moves really to go in that direction. And that's the only thing that I think I would be kind of fascinated with. I do not believe that representative government works. And it's just like I don't believe that capitalism works anymore. I think it's all crony, and it's bought off, and the money makes it all fall apart.
Yeah, I've been a member of a political party for a very short time. It was a so-called alternative party, and I've seen, even that within this small alternative party, you had egos determining really the course of the party. And in addition to that, I've also worked in public service, so I've also seen politics from the other side and from up close. And it's corrupt everywhere. As soon as you put somebody in a position of power, and especially if it's someone who wants to be in a position of power, then things are corrupt, because if they want to be in a position of power, then it's because they want to better themselves, and because they're ambitious, and they like the job, they like the pay, they like the power they have, they like to have their face on TV, their name in the newspapers.
The politicians that you would like to have are like the Abraham Lincoln here in the United States, somebody who is wants to perform for the good of the people, and not for power. In my times, when I was in the political process, certainly there in NATO, and when I was in Washington, D.C., everybody who was part of the political process, everybody was really out for themselves. To gain power, gain prestige, gain their career, they were working with other people, but there was a few guys that were working for these guys you ran into that were trying to, they could see the vision of a certain person. But the politicians themselves, the guys that were really, I always had a sense that, they were after a gain for themselves. They're not trying to help us. They're trying to increase their own personal, whatever they want to get.
And they cover themselves in here in Europe. You've got less so than in America, and I'm not sure in the UK, but I think it'll be similar in the UK. You've got party political system. So you're actually, somebody wants to run for office, but that is with the support of the party. So the party says, okay, we're gonna put this guy up, but then that's just the big name to get the voters, but in the end, it's the party that decides on everything. So what you vote for, even if you vote for one guy in particular, that vote always goes to the party. And so in the end, if suppose that party does make it, into the win the elections, which basically mean nobody wins the elections with an absolute majority. So you always have to have
it's always coalition government. Yeah.
And so, but say they're big enough, they've got enough votes to enter a coalition, then it's still up to how the parties can negotiate with one another in terms of forming a coalition. Like, okay, let's not have the Greens. The green ones have a lot of votes, but we don't want them in parliament. So we don't want them in government. So let's try to do it without them. And so it's just a matter of what parties can agree to divide the power among themselves. And usually it's always the three big ones. That's the Keynesian liberals, the Christian Democrats, and the socialists. Those are the three traditional parties. The Green Party is fairly big, but not that big, and two alternatives, so that they're not so mainstream as the others. And then once those parties agree on a coalition, then they start dividing the offices. Oh, we're going to put this guy there, we're going to put that woman there, and oh no, we want justice. You can have finance, but we want the Justice Department, and we'll give internal affairs to that one. And so they just arrange everything the way they see fit, and in the end, whatever you voted for, the people, as a voter, you don't really have any say in what's happening, because they're all doing it behind or above your heads, really, behind your back and above your head. So,
yeah, it's interesting when you read United States history. Our first president, George Washington, was very against the political parties, and mostly because he saw the way the parties ran, the UK, and the agendas that were basically put together. And he as he was leaving office, he said, "Hey, you really should not. We should not engage in party politics." And then the next several presidents were not really party affiliated, although Jefferson's now kind of reputed to be the guy that started the Democratic Party, but it rapidly deteriorated, if you will, into party politics. And of course, we had all these teething problems we had with putting together a republic, which, if you recall, back then there wasn't any. We were the only one. The French were trying it, through their revolution, and they got an emperor, they got Napoleon, and everybody was down on them. But no, this is a natural form. People are seeking power, and they try to oppose the other guys. They just form a natural blocks.
And they also can blame each other for not success. I just think it's really interesting that Socrates was not in favor of democracy as we practice it. He basically didn't like the idea of uninformed people having a vote, being able to vote. And one of the I guess, I don't know if he made the instance or a modern person tried to demonstrate what he meant, was he was saying, like, you have somebody who has excellent policy, and it might, and some of it, might, like we might have to do a little hard, to change course, but it's really solid policy. And then on the other side, running against him, is a man who owns a candy store. And he tells everybody, if you vote for me, you'll all get candy.
Right.
And invariably, the man who says everybody gets free candy will elect the man who says you all get free candy instead of the person with the good policy. So he really, he saw that unless you were actually informed enough, mature enough, and not so easily swayed by a sweet seller, that democracy was dangerous. And he later on he proved himself quite right in a way that was lethal to him, because he was brought up on charges of corrupting the miners of Athens.
Yes.
And
drink poison to get rid of.
Let's finish the story. The reason he was accused of corrupting the morals of miners, because he was questioning the gods.
Yeah.
And in the whole religious system of Athens, and because young people were hearing this, he went on trial. And you know what happened? The 100 people were his jurors, and they voted on it, and it was 52 for the death penalty and 48 to not give him the death penalty. So he ended up, by a vote of 4 people, or that tiny majority, he was put to death. So he.
Well, I thought he had the option that if I recall, that you could leave Athens or drink poison, and he said, I'll drink poison. Or am I remembering wrong?
I don't know that part, but I guess when, at least, maybe he did have that option, but that option would have been after they, had voted for the death penalty for him. There was a vote, and it was 52 to 48 from 100 people. And I think he was just so sick of the stupidity of people who's like, give me death.
Well, and I think this is a very, very interesting point for us today. I mean, us in the alternative community. We joke about the Muggles. These guys really don't know what's going on. So they are, by my definition, a uneducated populace. So now, how can they vote on major issues? And negating the deep state is a major issue. How can they vote correctly? They are totally uninformed. And so
Deep state's a conspiracy theory.
well, yeah, I'm a conspiracy. I'll admit it.
I'm saying that in full sarcasm.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I mean, if people don't acknowledge some basic facts, I mean, I run across basic facts and I point it out. And of course, I have people on the forum even say, I think it should be very obvious. I mean, I'm absolutely dead convinced, or I should say to a high probability, that the sun is heating up and getting more chaotic. And there's a reason for that. And that's, the whole global warming thing has been built to cover that up. But NASA admits that other planets are, heating up, and yet ours is not. And, you just got to read around the edges and find this out. But how can anybody engage in any of that debate if that information doesn't get out there? So nobody can vote about the global warming issue, which is now just taken over politics across the whole globe.
Well, it's called climate change, so that way anything, it can be anything.
Yeah, it's
sure. I mean, but it's still, it's still warming. And as a matter of fact, I propose that chemtrails are actually being used to attenuate the energy that's reaching the ground because there's so much. Otherwise, we would really be cooking down here.
That's what Cliff High says also.
Yeah, no, I agree with Cliff on that.
So I'm going to bring it back to Robert David Steele. And the reason I'm going to do that is because a friend of mine went to Philadelphia where he was having a meetup. 8 people showed up, and 3 of those 8 people were my friend and her 2 friends that went there. So it starts off, they get there, and Robert, I guess, gives a prepared kind of, his spiel, his delivery, just like you see him on any of the other, when he goes on people's shows, he has this thing he says. And what really kind of freaked them out and even creeped them out was when he was done with his delivery, he was not very good at fielding questions. It was almost like he could read his script, but when it was time to speak from that script and maybe address questions on other things, he got very agitated. And what's interesting, when he first kind of came on the scene, he was throwing names, the 4 big names he was throwing around was Ralph Nader, Jesse Ventura, Kucinich, I forget his first name right now, and Cynthia McKinney.
Yeah.
Then Nader and Ventura dropped off, and it was down to Kucinich and McKinney. Now we basically only hear about McKinney.
Yes.
So when he was there, so one of the questions my friend asked is, tell us more about Cynthia McKinney. He goes, well, what do you want to know about her? He didn't want to talk about this person that he's always throwing in as one of the names he drops, but he really didn't want to speak about it. And then she said, well, how do you want us to organize these meetups? I don't know, just what do you think? Then he said, he asked him, what do you think about was that a good idea that I went on Kerry Cassidy? Basically, once he was done with his spiel, he actually had nothing to say, and then it was almost like he was intelligence gathering. He wanted to kind of know where else would be good for me to speak, which might explain also, again, why he went on Project Avalon to see what kind of buzz he got. Not that he was going to engage in a dialogue, but just to be seen. And so anyway, when they got back in the car, my friend, and her 2 friends, she goes, is it just me, or was that strange? And they both went, that was creepy.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because we used to do, when I was working with the military, we would always be prepping briefs. And what we would do is we'd get and this was working with the Air Force, we would find what we call the poster, the pilot had the wings, and he looked like he was right out of a recruiting poster. I mean, he looked good, and he could speak, but he may not have a brain in his head, and typically didn't. But what we would do is we would murder boredom is the term we use. We would get him so understanding the material that he could really understand the questions, but usually was in a very, very narrow sense, if you had the time. But the guy was really set up for a pitch, but if you took him off topic, there was nothing there. The guy was kind of an airhead, typically. And of course we would be in the audience to pick up these stray questions that, this is a general officer audience typically, and if the flag is asking you a question, you better have answers or you get thrown off stage. So that sounds like a intel kind of guy. You get yourself all shaped up, really, really know those kind of issues, but you a lot of times are only an inch deep. You can't really cover that stuff. So, and this was the intel guys. I worked with a lot of intel guys. I got some really crazy stories about that. I'll tell you sometime. But I guess I'm not surprised if he doesn't really understand. I mean, they were probably asking him alternative community questions. And he probably just has no idea. He's got his spiel. Let's do the unrigged thing. And you get him off the main topics. He's gonna run out of gas fast because that's kind of the way that world works.
Well, my closing comment would be. So he was dropping a while back. He was dropping Dennis Kucinich's name. Now he seems to be down to Cynthia McKinney. But the interesting thing is Dennis Kucinich is no stranger on the various things. He talks to Ron Paul. I mean, you see Dennis Kucinich, being interviewed on a number of places because he's a very reasonable guy. So although Robert David Steele was dropping Dennis's name, I never heard Dennis bring Robert David Steele up. And I think that's interesting that we have somebody dropping, you would think there'd be some cross-pollination going there, but there was only one pollinator, and that was RDS. Kathy, you have anything to say about that?
No.
Yeah, this is crazy American politics. I'm sure it drives the Europeans crazy.
Yeah. But what I do have something to say about is, in the system, like the election thing, there's always, I think, a majority of people don't vote at all. And most people who don't vote because there's nothing there for them to vote for.
Yeah, and we have the same thing. I mean, Trump is very much a minority president. I think he actually polled across everybody who could vote, like 24 or 23% of the vote. So yeah, he's absolutely a minority president. I mean, and everybody kind of looks at, I didn't vote, and and then you had half voted for Hillary, and then another quarter at least didn't vote at all. So it's.
Well, at least you guys have that option, because as I said earlier, I'm not sure whether I said it on a TOTCAST or one of our other conferences, but in Belgium, you've got compulsory voting, so you have to go and show up at the risk of a serious penalty if you don't. And the same thing for the people who man the polling stations. They're not government employees or town employees, public servants. They're just they're not volunteers either. They are picked from a certain age category and different walks of life, and they are summoned, and they have to show up at the polling station and man it from 7:30 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and it's always on a Sunday, because people don't have to work on a Sunday, unless
you don't have to have a holiday to give people time off to vote either. So
yeah, exactly, and
makes sense.
If you are at work, people who do work on weekends, medical staff, paramedical staff, people in 24/7 in 3-shift continuous systems, they have to of course be at their job, and they have an excuse not to vote. But and if you're out of the country, then you have an excuse. But and if you're very, very ill, but then you have to have a doctor's voucher. Otherwise, you don't have if you don't have an excuse, you have to show up. And there are some people who say, they'll never come after me. I'm not going, and they'll never come after me. But that's a matter of playing Russian roulette. There's a chance that they won't come after you because they don't have the manpower or the time or whatever. But there's just as much a chance that they do come and, hey, you didn't go and vote, pay up. And
hey,
so
Aragorn, the half German in me says, you will vote and you will like it.
Yes. Or you will be shot at dawn.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I still maybe trying to get a bit of a wrap up on this guy, because I really want to go to the next topic that you have, Aragorn, about the software. But I don't know that RDS is the guy that is going to be the guy for the alternative community. I don't think this unrigged thing is going to work. I think it's all about him. I think he wants to leverage this into an advisory position with Trump, because he has actually said that. And it's sort of a Hail Mary pass trying to make something work. And I think the Buffalo Us guy is into it. And maybe just thinking about that, perhaps if he wasn't trying to take down Alex Jones, maybe he was a Hail Mary pass on Alex Jones, trying to get the alternative community to back him up by saying something outrageous like slave colony on Mars. Maybe
that's my impression too. That he was just trying to win the support of the alternative community by throwing that out there, and in the same vein then throwing Alex under the bus. And it very much smells like, because I've heard Steele talk in one video, and he talked about the deep state, but it smells very much to me like he is part of the deep state. And
yeah, when you're actually in there and having done these things. Now, I never was in one, but I helped put together a syllabus to talk about that stuff. I mean, I had guys that were trainers that talked to flags about it, and so I very much recognized what this thing was. Although, well, maybe the thing when they sent me into Russia might be a little bit of a psyop. But anyway, no, he did it. He's unapologetic. I did it. We didn't kill anybody. Well, he doesn't know that he didn't have the result that people died from it. I would be surprised if it didn't. Almost all of these actions have some sort of lethal repercussions. But I think it's an interesting play that he used. I'm a CIA guy, and I want your vote to help get these guys under control. But hey, things work sometimes, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, Aragorn, get it going.
Okay. Another topic that well, it's not really something that has come up recently, because it's a subject that has been going around for a long time already. It's the big battle, really, between proprietary technology and open source free technology. Free, not in the sense of free of free beer, free of charge, even though it often is, and in terms of software it usually is. But so it's about freedom, the freedom to study the technology. In this case, for instance, software, the freedom to copy it, to modify, make your own copy, and then modify it versus the original, and redistribute either the original or your own modifications. And this is now starting to move into the world of Well, general engineering, it's also moving into the world of computer hardware, but it has always been strongest and has been around the longest in the world of computer software, and specifically operating systems, but not limited to operating systems. So when you have proprietary software, what you have is, first of all, it's expensive usually. And you pay for the software, you pay for your computer. And usually the software comes bundled with a computer. So people think, I got it for free. I have, for instance, Windows on my computer, say, and I got it for free because it came with a computer. No, it was included in the price of the computer. But what's most importantly about it is it's proprietary, and you don't own that software. What it means, that software remains the property of the company that, in this case, Microsoft, for instance, or if you have an Apple machine, then it's Apple who is the proprietor of the software, and you are not allowed to study the code. You are not allowed to install it on other machines. You are not allowed to modify the code, not even if it would make the code work better on your own computer. And usually that type of code also contains backdoors through which the vendor can then install software on your computer without your consent, or remove software from your computer without your consent. For instance, say copyrighted stuff, even if it doesn't belong to them, they can remotely remove it. So basically, you paid for a computer and you're not allowed to do with it as you please, even though it's your computer. It's in fact the software maker who decides what you can do and can't do with your computer. Now the alternative is free software, and I myself I've been using free software since the year 2000. Actually, 1999, and I've been using specifically what is called what most people call the Linux operating system. It's actually GNU plus Linux, because it's two separate projects brought together. The GNU project, which started in 1983, was started by a guy called Richard Stallman. He was a computer scientist working at MIT in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, you might want to spell that, Aragorn. It's a GNU for folks trying to understand exactly what you're saying.
GNU, GNU.
Right.
It's a recursive acronym. Actually, these guys, they like recursive acronyms, and it's a recursive acronyms for GNU is not Unix, even though for all intents and purposes it is Unix, and actually it has been certified as a Unix. But what he meant to say was that Unix back then was a proprietary operating system, while GNU was written from scratch without reusing any existing code. So it was written from scratch, and it was written as free software. Anyone who wanted access to the source code could have the source code, could study it, could modify it, could redistribute their own modifications to the code, provided that the recipient would get the same rights. And then the other component is Linux, which is an operating system kernel. The kernel is essentially the lowest part of the operating system. It's the highest privilege part of the operating system, which communicates with the hardware. So it does all the nitty-gritty stuff, memory management, it controls the hard drives, etc., process management, security in some cases. In the case of Linux, that is definitely so. And the two were brought together because GNU was of professional quality, but the one thing they were missing was a working kernel, because they were going to go with a very revolutionary kernel, a microkernel. Was very revolutionary, and it still is, but that kernel was on the back burner, and they worked on everything else first, because Unix architecture is a modular operating system. So you can basically use components from one Unix system on another Unix system. Maybe not binary compatible, but source code compatible. So all you had to do was take that source code and compile it on the other machine, and then it would work there. So that's what they worked on first, the what they call the user land. So everything that the user interacts with, and the kernel was put on a back burner, and even now it's still in a very primitive stage. But back in 1991, there was a Finnish guy called Linus Torvalds. He's from a Swedish-speaking minority in Finland, and he was studying at the University of Helsinki, and there he was interacting with the mainframe of the university, which ran Unix, and he ran a Unix-alike system on his own computer called Minix, but Minix was only a 16-bit system, and he had a 32-bit machine, so he wanted to use all the power of his own computer, and the Minix license did not allow him to recompile or modify the kernel. So he set out on writing his own kernel, and then in August or September, I think it was August of 1991, in the Minix news group on Usenet, he announced that he had written a kernel, and he had ported some parts of GNU to it, and he was asking for people, I'm not gonna make money with this. I don't want to make money with this, but if people want to jump in and help out, develop this further, I would very much appreciate it. And people did, and the GNU people were also monitoring that news group, so they jumped on it, and they started porting large parts of GNU, eventually the whole of GNU, minus, of course, its own kernel that wasn't production ready, and they started porting that to the Linux kernel, and that hence became GNU plus Linux or GNU/Linux. And it is right now, it's not the only free software operating system, but it is the most popular one. It is also used on servers a lot. And as a matter of fact, more than 70% of the internet is powered by GNU plus Linux.
Well, and I have to qualify myself a little bit, because I was in a prior incarnation within this incarnation. I was a programmer myself, and but I was really high-end code. I didn't get down to machine stuff or whatever. I did Fortran and COBOL and really ancient languages now. But yeah. Can a practical guy, I shouldn't say, I'd say an average guy, use this system, but you can't get all the games, you can't get all the software and all the stuff that you have now on both, Mac, which is what I run now, and the PCs, which I got away from because I hate Billy Bob Gates and with all the Microsoft crap software that they've had, and I had just huge issues. I used to run it all the time, but I went to Apple, and frankly, I've had zero problems with Apple. Well, I've had one little incursion that I got rid of, but compared to all the crazy stuff that I had with my PC or PCs that I had, and I had a bunch of them, that's largely gone away. But as largely a user now, and I just don't have time to do all the, keep things maintained, stay up on the latest patches and all that other weird stuff. The Apple world really, really works well for me. But you mentioned in the, when you sent off, that Apple has back doors. Is that really well known? They do have back doors. Well, I guess I'm not surprised, but and then the other thing I want to sort of touch on here is everything that you have now, your car, your smart TV, all your electronics are software driven and are susceptible to being taken over, invaded, whatever. Where we saw this come out, WikiLeaks. They look at you through your cameras and listen to you through the microphone, and you have all these devices around you that's there.
Yeah, but we have to look at those things separately. We have to look at the use cases. First of all, what you said, I'll try to remember every point you made. The GNU plus Linux or let's just call it Linux for short, the usability for a day-to-day, I have been a programmer as well, only high-end stuff really. I've done some minor hacking in the legitimate sense of the word, hacking, not as in breaking into a system, because that's cracking. Hacking is actually modifying stuff so that it works better, or
it's the old use of the word hack until it became bad. Yeah.
Exactly. I've done some of that in with DOS back in the days. I've done COBOL. I've programmed in Pascal. I've worked with databases, stuff like that. Occasionally, I write some shell script, Unix shell script for my own purposes, or to share it with people who want it, because I always document my code, and so that people can learn the syntax and everything. But other than that, I'm a day-to-day user. So what I email, web browsing, watching movies, listening to music. Right now, even I'm sitting here with this laptop, and I'm having this conference with you guys. This system is running Linux. There's no Windows on the system. There's no Windows on my other computer.
Oh, okay. So you're running off Linux right now. Then it's essentially new systems.
And it's got there's people who want Office software. There are many different Office suites that you can install. There's OpenOffice. Right, and there's a fork of OpenOffice called LibreOffice, which has actually technically advanced beyond OpenOffice already, and it's compatible with Microsoft, for document formats. It has its own. Well, it supports the Open document format as a native format, but it's compatible with the Microsoft stuff, and you can install it. That's the beauty of it. All of that software is usually also ported to Windows and to Mac, so you can install it. That software, that Office suite, on a Mac or on Windows, you can do that because you have versions of that. I use Firefox. Actually, I'm using Pale Moon, but Pale Moon also exists for Windows. It's a Firefox fork. So I have Firefox installed as well. I can use Firefox as a browser. I've got Firefox, and the other one's Pale Moon. Watching movies, making movies. And that's the point. When you install Linux, usually you install that from a DVD. It comes with a bunch of software already that gets pre-installed. And after you do the initial setup, then you go online to your chosen distributions repositories. So say, right now, these machines are running PC Linux OS, but a very popular distribution would be Ubuntu, for instance, or Mint. Well, you install Ubuntu or Mint, and then your package manager is pre-programmed, pre-configured to look for online repositories, which we call mirrors, because they are mirrored across multiple servers for the greatest availability. And it'll have those mirrors set up, and then you can install additional software from there on. And those packages are all signed and checksummed, and those checksums are checked, and those signatures are checked when you install it, and it downloads them, it installs them, and sets them up, and you don't even have to reboot. It does the whole thing. It regularly updates itself, and because the source code is open, if you have if you got a security leak in some component, it gets, there are more eyes to spot the bugs, because there are more good people looking at the source code than there are bad people looking at the source code. So the good people look at the source code. Oh, there's a bug in there, and they submit a patch, and the patch gets applied, and within days, you get 2-3 days maximum, you get updated binary version ready to install from your repositories.
Well, now, how would an average guy, and we're probably not talking about you and me, certainly, but how would an average guy, if he wanted to get on this system, what would you do? Buy, I mean, I'm out of the PC world. I don't even know hardly anything about it anymore. But you would say maybe buy a PC. I think it'd be a little bit harder to put on a Mac, it looks like.
That's
Just
possible.
due to the way the Mac kind of is. It's really a closed, walled garden system, if you will.
It's actually Linus Torvalds, the developer of the Linux kernel. He uses a Mac.
Oh, he does?
He does, with Linux on it.
Okay, so that's interesting. But yeah, he's a lot smarter than I am. But okay, so what would you recommend? I mean, to the guys that would be listening here who wants to get themselves in a more covert, if you will, system.
There are different ways of trying it out. The best way to try it is to install. I should say this first. Linux comes from its developers. It comes as source code only. But what you want is a downloadable system, a binary system. And there are different organizations, many different organizations, hundreds, some of them commercial organizations, so companies, that offer you a distribution, which they completely set up. And there are different distributions for different use cases, but many are general purpose. So what you do is you go to the website of one of these distributions, say Ubuntu, and you look for the link where you can download a live DVD image. That is an image, that is to say, it's a big file, .img at the end of the file name. And the idea is that you burn that to a DVD, but not as a file. You actually, it's an image of a DVD. So what your most burning software will recognize that and will create the DVD out of that image. And then with a live DVD, you boot your computer from the DVD, and the system will run from the DVD, doesn't store anything on your hard disk. You can also do the same thing with USB sticks, thumb drives. Some images are specifically designed to boot from a thumb drive, and you can and then you have, okay, it will run slower than when you run it from the hard disk, because a DVD drive, an optical drive, is slower. But it won't store anything on your computer unless you tell it to. And then you get a feel for the system, because there are different user interfaces. The one I'm using is KDE Plasma 4. There's already KDE Plasma 5 now. Another popular one would be GNOME, which is part of the GNU project. Then there is XFCE, which is somewhat similar, but I would say more. It has more of a traditional Windows-like look and feel to it. LXDE, same thing. That there are several. Cinnamon, and so you pick the one you choose. Even though once you install the system, you can install multiple graphical user interfaces side by side, and when you log in, you choose which one you want to use. So you can say, today I'm going to be using Plasma, and tomorrow I'm going to be using GNOME. That's all possible. But on the images that you install or for live DVDs, just to save up on space, they usually put one user interface on there. And then you give it a test run. And if you like it, you can just choose to install it. Now, of course, if you have a Windows system that came with Windows pre-installed, then you typically have Windows will be using all of your hard disk, and you will have some recovery partition, and then your main Windows partition. But what you need to do if you want to install it is you boot up into Windows first in Windows safe mode, and then you run a complete defrag on your hard disk, and after doing that, then you boot up into from the DVD, you boot up into Linux, and then you bring up a partitioning tool, and you can shrink the Windows partition and make room for your Linux partition. And usually the partitioners have automatic allocation for your main partition and your swap partition, and you can have additional partitions, but that's only if you really know what you're doing, or if you're more experienced, let's put it that way. And then you install the system, and like I said, at the end, you simply pull out the DVD, reboot, and you've got a working system. And then it's just a matter of tweaking it a little to your personal preferences, changing colors, fonts, and it's all pretty straightforward. And it's all, graphical user interface, mouse driven. It's pretty easy to use.
What if you were interested, Aragorn? As you know, I'm moving, and I'm going to have a might even be a nice computer lab in this new house I'm in. But I don't really want to give up. There's a lot of things I have in my Apple world that I like, and might even start doing some PC stuff again. But I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of air gapping my system, and we did this in the military, where I do not have any connections to the outside world for a set of computers, but I have one computer, like maybe this Unix thing that you're describing, and it is my interface to the outside world, and I'm using that to keep the bad guys out. Any thoughts about that? Would that work, or are they going to infect themselves through my Wi-Fi system, or what?
Well, Wi-Fi is always tricky because Wi-Fi can be intercepted. A cable, right. Intercepting cable, sniffing on a cable is more difficult. But Wi-Fi, that's just you're broadcasting, and so
I am moving off Wi-Fi. Matter of fact, I'm going to have. I'm going to run Cat5 through the entire house, Ethernet, I guess, and then I'll have all my main, because it's faster, and then I will have some limited Wi-Fi. I'll turn the Wi-Fi off at night because I now have suspicions that Wi-Fi is actually bad for you, and in some cases might be really bad for you, and especially with this new, these new bands that are going to show up here, but. So I'm already, and by the way, one of the reasons I got this house is because I've got nice air gaps between me and the other guy. I live in an apartment now, basically, even though I'm on the beach, but I've got Wi-Fi signals coming from all over the place. I mean, from a couple houses down. And so just seeing a message here from Red saying we're at hour and 10 minutes. So I guess we need to wrap this thing up here. Aragorn, what would be your idea to get somebody into this thing, and maybe quickly?
Well, the thing is that most people don't even realize it, but a lot of the routers that you buy off the shelf actually have Linux running inside already. Yeah. So it's a system on a chip, and those are usually Linux systems. And if they're not, then they're BSD systems, which is comparable, usually FreeBSD or something, which is similar to Linux. It's just let's say a different dialect of the Unix implementation. But you can basically, if you want, you can forego the router and set up a dedicated PC as a router, the PC running Linux and having maybe a wireless card in it for your wireless devices. And it works really well as a firewall. It works really well as a router. It's perfectly doable, and it's a lot more secure than if you were to trust a Windows machine in that role, or an Apple machine, because Apple does have indeed at least one backdoor. Windows has more. Plus that of course, Windows, Microsoft, the company behind Windows, is working together with the many alphabet soup agencies, the Department of Homeland Security, DARPA, Defense Intelligence Agency, CIA, NSA. They work with all those people, so they're not to be trusted. And also, it has leaked out. I used to have the link. I'm not sure whether I still have, but it has leaked out that Microsoft actually sells zero-day exploits, which means exploits that have not been known about in the. They've been considerable bad guys for the longest time now.
Let me ask you this: would it be worthwhile for you? And I know your time is pretty short. Could you, I don't know, maybe put a thread on TOT that would at least give us links where we could do that, or maybe give some advice and because videos, people watch a video and then you got to write notes. But
Actually, I put a thread about that actually on Project Avalon back when I was still there. But I oh God, I'll see if I can dig up something.
yeah, maybe you can steal that off there and then repost it to TOT. I mean, of course, you might have some issues with Bill saying that it was copyrighted since you put it on his forum. I don't know.
Yeah,
but that would be good. If you could. Yeah, I worry about stuff like that. But the if you could give, because I'm interested, it'd be nice to have maybe one system that again that is talking to the world, and I air gap everything and do stuff internally, and stay away from the the world. But I run through my interface to everybody else through that system.
Yeah, sure. There are many different solutions that you can, many different setups that you can implement. One last thing that I wanted to say about these exploits, all of these exploits that you hear about, and like you said, everything has software running, like the TV, smart TVs, and what is it? That is actually not so much because of vulnerabilities in the software. But what happens is that the NSA and the CIA separately, as a separate program, what they do is they intercept certain hardware as it ships from their manufacturers, say television sets, smart TVs or smartphones or routers or even hard disks. They intercept that, they ship it off to another country where it is being taken apart, professionally taken apart, reprogrammed, backdoors put in there, and then they put it all together. They wrap it all up just as if it came from the factory, and then they ship it to the retailers. So that's what they do. They intercept the hardware.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, that's the way they do it.
Right.
But yeah, so I can look into provide, maybe not today, but I can look into. I'll have a think about posting something like that at the One Truth. Sure.
Yeah. I think that would be a good service, certainly for me. I mean, I'm because I am now finally getting my life together. That's how I know the world's going to end, because I'll have all my boxes unpacked. I'll have everything set up, and then God's going to say, "Well, you've now done all the things I wanted you to do." So,
I don't think the world's going to end, because I've still got stuff sitting in boxes in my garage. So,
oh, well, good. Maybe you're going to be the guy that saves us there. But
right.
I'm cleaning my life up. So I don't know.
I'll save the day.
All right. So why don't we all have our final words? This is my final word besides saying goodbye. How about you, Kathy? Any final words?
Yeah, no, I'm just so glad to have listened to all of that. I know nothing about IT as such. It's very interesting.
Well, we've been talking about IT somewhat, you and I.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still a beginner.
Yeah, I'll turn you into a computer scientist.
All right.
Well, Aragorn, maybe I can get you to come over to where I'm going to be moving to, and help you get me set up on his lab or something like that, and then I can get you a UFO ride, which I'm sure I'll be able to do.
Lovely.
Only on that condition.
Well, there you go. I will definitely work on that.
Okay. Then I guess. I guess we've got Rad. How long we've been talking?
We're at 1 hour and 17 minutes now.
Okay, maybe you can wrap it up for this show then.
Sure. I think we had a good discussion. 2 good topics: Robert David Steele, a little bit about democracy, politics, and a little geekdom.
Yeah, that was pretty geeky there for a while.
Yeah. We've still got lots of stuff we can talk about the next time, so I'm trying not to run ahead of myself.
I want to burn all the topics up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for being with the TOTCAST. I think we'll have a discussion about maybe separating it from Cosmic Emporium originally I had called these Voices of the Forum. And, TOTCAST, and maybe we'll go and even get ourselves a new logo. A new thumbnail, I mean. But that's for another thing. But thank you for joining us, and we do this weekly, so and usually on the weekend. So if you've been following them and you're enjoying them, please look for them on Saturday or Sunday, usually a Saturday evening or Saturday night, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you, and see you next time.